Down, down, in another around.
Sugar, we're going down swinging. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our new season of Not Your Father's Movies. I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
And I am Jesse, and we are coming at you with some big 2020 energy.
I guess so. I guess we have to say that, right?
Yeah, it is 2020 energy.
It is, because we're talking about this week for our inaugural episode of our new season. We're talking about our year in review, our top 5 movies of 2020. This is our goodbye, our salutations, our sayonara to what is probably the hardest year in all of our lives.
Absolutely.
So far?
Yeah.
So far.
I don't know. Who knows what 2021 will bring, guys?
Is that pessimistic or optimistic, Jesse?
Oh, it's pessimistic.
Oh, shit.
It's very pessimistic.
Well, it was a hard year for everyone. We started out with high hopes for a living, and then we were really crushed, and then continued to be crushed month in and month out.
You couldn't think of another song?
That was the first one that came to mind. What's one in your mind? Do you have one? I want to hear your pipes.
I remember, like, Three Doors Down, like, I'm a loser. Like, that's how I feel at the end of 2020.
You mean like Beck?
Oh, yeah, that's also a Beck song.
Soy un imperator. I'm a loser, baby. So why don't you kill me? So 2020 was really hard on everyone, but something that did buoy our spirits, at least kind of towards the second half of the year, was the movies, was TV shows. And that is really where, a lot of us were in states that weren't open. We had not a lot of places to go. We couldn't see friends. We could only connect with loved ones through the telephone or through WhatsApp or video chats. And the only way to really feel like, at least for me, how I felt connected to people was either in doing this podcast or in watching new movies. That's the only way I felt that human connection that I had previously taken for granted. So that's kind of what this episode is about, is this look back in the year. What was it that we thought was truly exceptional? I think probably the best place to start would be in TV shows. What's the best TV shows we watched this year? I would say for me, the best thing that I saw in TV shows was probably the season 2 of Mandalorian. A good friend of mine once described this as the most stupid show that was still good. And I think I kind of agree with that. Like, it is the most Star Wars show you could possibly imagine. And it yadas away a lot of things that we would otherwise ask a show to kind of grapple with or explain. Yeah. But because it's Star Wars, it really worked for me. All the way up to like the shocking final minutes. The Mandalorian is something that my wife almost refuses to watch with me, because anytime Baby Yoda comes on screen, I go, oh, look, it's Baby Yoda. Oh, he's eating something. I'm so happy he's eating.
Yeah. That's good for him.
Exactly. He's happy. Look how happy he is.
Yeah. Every time we see Baby Yoda, we just think of our son, because there were when we first watched season 1, he acted exactly like our son at the time, just like eating little parts on the ship, and that's how our son is. He just like goes up to everything and like takes it down, starts looking at, throws it away, and goes to another thing. That's Baby Yoda. My son is Baby Yoda.
Pretty much. I watched him in a previous time. He picked up a rock. He licked it, and then he threw it. But it wasn't as if the lick was anything except a matter of form. I must lick, and then I must throw.
It's his way of knowing the world.
Yeah, I loved it. But yeah, that's definitely one of the best things that I think probably most of you listeners have seen this year. I mean, talk about something to buoy your spirits and just interest you. I mean, Star Wars has moved to TV, and it's so successful in my mind. It was a joy to watch this year. Mike, do you want to mention anything you saw?
Yeah, well, it was crazy to me. I was talking to my friend who I had finished this show with. We watched most of the show together.
I think we know who this friend is.
Yeah, he's been on the show, Dave. Brother Dave
from the It episode.
From the It episode. This is one of both of our favorite shows. BoJack Horseman ended in 2020, right at the end of January. And we had gotten together then, and we'd watched all the episodes of the final half of the season that debuted then. It's crazy to me that it came out then, because it just seems like a completely different time in my mind. But it was really cool to see the end of this horrible epic about this horrible human being.
Not a human being.
This horseman.
This horrible horseman.
He's a horseman.
A horse being. Horseman. Yeah, he's a horseman.
Yeah, he's a BoJack horseman.
Yeah. But seeing his arc and seeing sort of the redemption and the not redemption that sort of occurs towards the end of the show, I thought it was a perfect ending. Some people didn't, but it was just a wonderful thing to see. It moved me very deeply, and I'm really, really glad that we got that this year.
Yeah. Like, I've been with BoJack Horseman since it first came out.
Yeah.
When it first came out on Netflix and those little banners came up and I had nothing else to do, I used to watch that. And I made it through the first 5 episodes, which were not very good.
Yeah.
And I kept watching and was so pleasantly surprised by the end. And I've been watching the show since it came out. Every season, I was so excited. And this ending was very satisfying for me.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting hearing you guys talk about it, because I actually came onto the show because of Jesse's recommendation way back in the day, where Jesse said, hey, it's not just a stupid animated horse show. There's actually a lot more to it. It talks about existence and purpose and what you want out of life and depression. And watching it, with the seasons, this is a show I've also followed, except not through this final season. I haven't seen the final half of the season that came out in 2020.
You don't want it to end.
A little bit, because I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm a little scared because I think as we all are talking about this show, like, this is a show that I felt uncomfortable by a lot of times, because I recognized a lot of myself in BoJack, and I was uncomfortable at that sight, at that vision. And in a lot of ways, I was frightened of the ending of the show, because I thought that maybe it could be prophetic. I know it sounds stupid now that I say it, but it was something I was really scared of, and something I have been kind of avoiding. I really do want to get back to it, but I've never connected with a TV character like I've connected with BoJack.
Yeah.
And I want to know how his story ends, because how it ends might decide something I might do in the future. Like, I think all great art does. It moves you. It pushes you in different directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if it is prophetic, I think it's better than you might think it is. And I'm not going to say any more than that about it. I don't want to, we don't want to do spoilers at all in this, but just to talk about, this was a great work of art, something that was really personal. It was part of our lives since we were married, right? Like, this is something that's been a part of our life, from being single dudes to being married dudes to having kids.
Married, with children.
Yeah, exactly. Massive changes in our lives through that. Really interesting to put a bow on that show at the beginning of this year of just explosive change.
Explosive implosion.
Yeah.
I would like to add one thing, because this is something I've always wanted to tell a massive group of people.
Nice.
Because I hope this is a massive group of people.
It better be.
Yeah.
Get the word out, NYFM Army.
Tell your friends. Tell your wives.
If you ever do want to watch BoJack Horseman, I recommend you start with the second to last episode of the first season. That is how I've gotten people to watch it. Because the first 5...
That's what you did with me.
Yeah.
You made me watch that episode first, and I said, oh, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
That is something mind-blowing. I've never seen that.
That episode it's a great one. Every season has at least one great stellar episode, and with a lot of not so good ones sometimes.
Sometimes, you have to say it.
Yeah. The first half of the first season is not somewhere I think anybody should start with. It's a miracle that I made it through. Sure. I was just so bored at the time. But
you were there for the Mr. Peanut Butter jokes.
Yeah.
Mr. Peanut Butter.
I was. But
what are you doing here?
What's her name? The person he's always seeing off screen and running after her. What are you doing here? Is this a crossover episode?
I will say that goes completely against my core to say that you should start not at the very beginning of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, my personal way of looking at the world.
I just think it's really hard to get through 2 hours of this show when it's only fluff.
That's a fair point. Yeah, definitely agree with you there. But I'm a completionist, so I like to see it all. I like to start at the beginning and go the bumpy ride to where it gets good.
Yeah, to be clear, I think you should start there, and then you go back and you should watch.
Get hooked.
Yeah, that is the episode that best represents BoJack Horseman, in my opinion. So you should watch that. It will spoil some things, but to be honest,
there's nothing much.
Otherwise, you just won't watch it, I think.
Yeah. You gotta get the point where Todd says, "We've solved the drug problem."
So great. Yeah. Yeah, but just speaking of that, I mean, the show has just so many, and this is the final thing I'll say, but the show has just, like, every season has at least one episode that just kind of breaks through the wall of what you think could be done on TV.
The silent episode?
Yeah, the silent episode is amazing, let alone by an animated show. It does so much with animation. It does so much with, I mean, Free Churro is the episode everyone talks about the most. It's such an incredible episode that just that alone makes it worth watching. But then also the deep sort of human story that it tells is incredible.
It's messy. It's brutal. It's rough. It's funny. It's sweet. It's very sad. It's everything.
And very adult. Super adult.
Yeah. Don't watch it with your kids.
No. Why would you?
Not a dad show.
Definitely not. It's a dad by yourself kind of thing. But what else have you been watching? Did you watch something involving wild animals this year?
I did.
Yeah.
And it was a documentary?
Interesting.
It involved a monarch.
Oh.
A monarch of big cats.
Like a duke.
Close.
Like a princess.
Warmer.
Like a warlord.
Oh, wait. Princess Carolyn. Oh, wait. Sorry. Wrong show. It was Tiger King.
Tiger King.
Which I saw. I thought, this is stupid. And then my wife started watching it. And then I came in like halfway through the show. I was like, this is I am hooked. I don't know what this is, but I am hooked on whatever this is.
Just like they're hooked on meth. Yeah. So we I think in this 2020, I distinctly remember I was an essential worker, but when everything was being shut down and things were really rough and everyone is being laid off and all my friends are getting unemployment and like, we're not sure what's happening. It's really destabilized. There was something that came out on Netflix that seemed to sort of almost unite the country in a weird way. Like everyone just watched Tiger King. And I remember hearing everything about Tiger King and everyone's like, oh yeah, except for Tiger King, which is great. And I didn't know anything about this. It's from the makers of the Netflix documentary series that I really love, Wild Wild Country. And I really respect that documentary. So I started watching it and I think it fundamentally fails as a documentary. They are not clear on their subject or what they're doing or why. And the subjects change frequently and almost not on purpose in the show. It's really just like the filmmakers themselves realized they were along for a ride.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they'd uncovered, but every step of the way, they were like, all right, let's do this. Carol Baskin, Animal Sanctuary. Oh, killed her husband. Okay, let's talk about that. Because it originally seemed like it was a documentary about like endangered wild cats that were being farmed and put into zoos. And then it turned into, there's this crazy guy named Joe Exotic who is seducing straight men and getting them hooked on drugs. And also running like an underground like animal trafficking ring with a bunch of other people in the country. And he hates Carol Baskin because she fed her husband to tigers. And you're like, what are we doing right now?
Oh my word. I think Tiger King represented the sort of chaos everybody was feeling at the beginning of this year.
I think so.
It was that chaos.
Yeah. Like every minute you were like, what are we doing? Where are we now? Who's this guy? Because the series just keeps opening up to different guys, and you're like, okay, so you run also a quasi fake animal sanctuary where you also traffic these things, and it's only open to some people, and you set off cherry bombs in your yard and have guns.
Yeah, it's like, how many people are doing this?
Yeah,
it seems like there's a lot.
Everyone apparently. Like I'm one of the few people apparently in America that does not have a tiger.
I guess we should get into that business.
I think so.
Yeah.
Apparently business is a booming.
Guys, I wasn't going to tell you this, but I'm in that business.
You're a Tiger King?
Up. I am a Tiger King.
Nice. Okay. So you're more like a Tiger Prince.
Yeah, a Tiger Prince.
Yeah. Are you an apprentice? Are you an apprentice?
I'm a tiger, a prince.
A tiger, a prince. Please say it correctly.
Sure. No, I will not.
Sometimes when I have trouble sleeping at night, I like to take that section of that episode out and I just listen to it on a loop where you finally say a prince.
That's a Cinderella episode, right?
It is.
Okay, good.
I was told by a listener of the show that if she were on the episode, she would never have let me get away with such a grammatical holocaust.
It is truly terrible.
But Tiger King, and what else have you seen, Jesse?
So Middleditch and Schwartz. It's another Netflix series. It's got 3 episodes. It stars Thomas Middleditch.
Yeah.
There you go.
Which one is he?
Jesse's favorite show.
This is my favorite show. Middleditch and Schwartz. It stars the guy Richard from Silicon Valley and John Ralphio from Parks and Rec, and they do long form improv, right? Where it's not like "What's my line anyway?" where they do like short little skits. No, this is like they take a story from the audience, they dig in a little to their story, figure out some characters in their lives and something that's happening, and they take that idea and they make, between these two guys, they tell a story just based off of that for 45 minutes. And the first one, it's about a wedding that's happening. It involves so many characters. These two guys play so many different characters with slightly different ways of talking, slightly different like ways that they're moving their body, you know, and different things going on with them. And the beauty of this show, it's watching them like come up with these characters on the spot, watching the other one trying to figure out where they're going with it.
Yeah. And
then try to remember what they've done before, because they're telling a cohesive story all the way through that actually has like an ending wrap up.
It's an incredible call and response that happens.
Yeah.
And it's one where it's incredibly dependent on trusting your partner completely. And they have that. There's moments where they definitely like ask an additional question where they're really confused as to where the person is going. They go like, hey, what is your character motivation? Oh, I'm a crazy side character asking questions. But it's really fun hearing it because you see this craftsman kind of at work.
Yeah.
And he's just asking for another clue so he can push the narrative forward. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
This on the spot storytelling.
And it's so funny. The first episode especially, I was laughing so hard the entire time. So was my wife. It's such a joy to watch. If you ever want like a good long form comedy improv, which I've never seen before, but these guys do it. If you ever want to see that, this is a show to watch. Middleditch and Schwartz.
I think Middleditch and Schwartz could be called Two Guys in a Chair on a Stage, and it's the exact same thing. Like there's no other. It's two guys on a stage with a chair and people shouting things at them.
Two chairs.
That's right.
Yeah, two chairs.
Fair. Two guys, two chairs. And I think one of the last things that we'd like to mention here is Mike. What do you think about a little HBO comedy show called Avenue Number 5?
Avenue Number 5 was hilarious. It was amazing. I did not have any idea what the show was. And Vito, you showed it to me. I came over one day and before the quarantine again, and you were here alone. Your wife was traveling, and you were just here in your boxers. And you're like, Mike, there's this show. You got to see this show.
I said from inside my tentacles. I was in my tentacle boxers, and I was buried beneath a deep veneer of depression and fast food because my wife was gone and I was working a ton.
It was like the second day.
Yeah. The floor was already like knee deep in beer bottles.
Yep, and fast food.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. You had already seen the whole thing or something. You'd seen 4 episodes. You're like, we're going to watch the whole thing again. And I was just dropping something off. And my wife calls me and is like,
your wife was already gone. Your wife was also out of town. Right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So we just watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And then I went and showed it to my wife. It was great.
Yeah, so Avenue Number 5 is the story. So it stars Hugh Laurie alongside a very strong supporting cast, but it's about a ship that kind of serves as a cruise ship for the rich in the future, where you can take a cruise in space and they loop you around, I think it's Saturn is where they're going around.
Yeah.
But partially around Saturn, their chief engineer meets with an incredibly brutal death by accident. And now they are stranded. And because of certain gravitational anomalies, they are knocked off course. And they don't know how long it's going to be to get back to Earth, but it's going to be several years. And you have a group of people, very wealthy, very privileged, stuck together on a ship for years going forward. And it's about how do they deal with this circumstance.
It's amazing. And they're all like terrible people, but
they suck.
But not like in the they kill people way, just that in the normal human way.
Well, the show was founded and created and written principally by Armando Iannucci, who we know from Veep and the movie like In the Loop. Yep. So he writes very caustic very erudite characters.
Great dialogue.
Incredible. The most insulting things I've almost ever heard said to another human being outside of the show Vito, which he also does. But it's caustic, it's hilarious, it's deeply black comedy.
Oh yeah. But it's also heartfelt.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of human relationships in it, and there's also a lot of really surprising story events that happen.
Yeah.
That are both what's the word? Irreverent? That's the nicest way to say it. That's the beginning.
That's the top layer of how to describe some of these events.
There's a recurring joke about floating corpses around the cruise ship in space that I died at.
Just go and watch this show. Go watch it. Go talk about it, because it didn't make a huge splash, even though it's amazing.
It got a mixed splash.
It did get renewed for a second season.
Thank God.
Hopefully it's good, and everyone should go and watch this and make sure that they talk about it, because I want to see more of this.
I want to see more. And if you watch it, if you can watch the first episode and honestly say you don't like the show, then bon voyage to you and vaya con Dios, and you like what you like. But if you can get through that episode and not laugh your ass off, I want to talk to you.
Where is your soul?
Yeah. I know where mine is. And then as a final shout out, I do want to talk about the other TV show that's sort of taken the streaming world by storm, which is Queen's Gambit. This is an incredible show. Anya Taylor-Joy is a star, not in the making, but a star that really seems to have finally arrived in our consciousness.
She makes this show.
She is the show.
Yeah.
Without her, there's no show.
Yeah, I wouldn't have watched any of Queen's Gambit if it wasn't for her acting and just her
presence.
Yeah, her presence. She has a unique presence.
She does.
A unique voice, and it makes the whole show very interesting.
She's really intense. She's really charismatic, and she's very quiet at the same time in this show. But while her dialogue may be small and quiet, her actions scream at the screen, and I love the way that she behaves in this, and her small mannerisms and everything that she gives away, and all the character work she does. Queen's Gambit, big recommend.
Yeah, can I just point out that we've talked about 6 TV shows, and 4 of them are Netflix originals.
That's surprising.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's surprising. Yeah. We are kind of. This is about what we've watched and what we've enjoyed. And enjoy is a very clear word here, because there's been a lot that's come out from many streaming giants, specifically like HBO has a really good year in terms of content that's come out. We watched I May Destroy You, which I thought was good, but didn't like. There's been a lot that's come out on various streaming services that just for one reason or another did not sort of make their way into these mentions. And these are the things that we mentioned that we liked.
That we saw.
That's a big one too.
There's a lot of stuff that I know I didn't see this year. I watched a lot more movies this year than I ever have, and which was great. And so, but I didn't watch as much TV. I watched a lot of old TV as well,
and that's great. I mean, stuff that I wish was kind of better would be stuff like Lovecraft Country. I wish Lovecraft Country was a better TV show. I would really like to champion that because I enjoy my time with it, But we're not here talking about those things. We're here talking about the things that we really connected with on a personal level. So let's go into what we're calling our mentions. Right off the top,
these are mentions of movies. Now we're moving into the movie space.
Absolutely,
not honorable mentions, just mentions.
We do have honorable mentions.
We just want to say that these are things that were notable that we encountered, and they did not make their way into our honorable mentions. So I want to mention that we did this year see Trial of Chicago 7. There's a whole episode we did about it. If you want to hear our actual thoughts on it, it's in that episode. But Jesse, I think you had something else you wanted to add.
The more I think about the movie, the more I like it. Right? I don't know why.
I like it when people like things.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, the historical aspect infuriated me, but again, the more I think about the movies from 2020, this one keeps rising for me.
Interesting. Would you see this? This is an extra kind of question that we hadn't discussed beforehand. But would you see this as a major player as a Best Picture candidate?
Maybe for acting.
Maybe who's I know we talked about it a little bit in the episode, but since the episode, who's the standout one since you've been reevaluating?
It's still Sacha Baron Cohen for me. I still think he's the standout star.
What about Yahya Abdul-Mateen? you see a best supporting actor nomination there?
I really have no idea in terms of that. Like, I think there were better best supporting actors, in my opinion.
I would agree, especially a very deaf and very emotional one that we might be getting to soon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you want our thoughts on Trial of Chicago 7, listen to the episode. We don't want to relitigate here. Some that three
Sustained.
three that I want to mention up front that I really enjoy but did not make it into my personal top 5 favorites. Again, top 5 is Palm Springs. This came along at a really great time in a lockdown year, in a quarantine year, and I found it immensely enjoyable, and I had a great night with my wife watching it. My wife has now since seen it 3 times. She really enjoys this movie. I do too. It's really funny. It's very adult, not insofar as like the stuff you're going to see is adult, although it is. But it's also just a very mature look at the passage of time and where we are and who we are as people. In that way, I want to mention here Soul. Soul did also not make it into our top 5. It's a movie I did not connect with emotionally when I watched it. I recognize the craft of the film, the work by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and the music, and then the work of Pete Docter as a writer and director, and all the animators it must be acknowledged, but simply could not get into the emotion of the story. If you want to look at more like big takes, hot takes about Soul, you just need to look at Twitter. We're not here for that, and I'm not interested in that. I only want to say, as myself, it didn't work for me. And finally, I just wanted to mention Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is the final role from Chadwick Boseman that we're going to see on screen. It is a vicious, angry performance from Chadwick Boseman. He gets to play an instigator, an antagonist, more than a protagonist in a lot of ways. It's a beautiful movie that's based upon the August Wilson play, produced by Denzel Washington, also starring Viola Davis as Ma Rainey. It's an incredible piece of work as a film that is made off of a play. And while you never forget it's a play, the movie making aspect of it does elevate the material in a lot of ways. It's a film I did resonate with very deeply. I would say in the end, I liked it, but in a lot of ways, it didn't feel like it was for me. It wasn't made for me. But getting off of that, let's get into something a little bit more fun. Wonder Woman, 1984.
Yeah.
The controversial movie of Christmas. Mike, what did you think of this?
I thought it was a great time. It was fun. It wasn't anything special. I didn't think it was as good as the first Wonder Woman, but it was fun. It was a superhero movie, and that's kind of about it.
I like this a little bit more than the first Wonder Woman. I know that might be a weird opinion, but I like the what if kind of scenario. I like the Twilight Zone of it. I like the outer limits of it. Mm-hmm. I liked that the bad guy stops being a bad guy by his own choice and not because he got punched a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed all that. And it's a very deep, like, father-son movie because that's the only reason that he makes the choices he makes. Mm-hmm. And Pedro Pascal just gives an incredible performance that is not, like, supported by the movie he's in.
Yeah, it kind of feels like he's in a very different movie. Like
he definitely wants to be in a different one.
And kind of the substance of, like, his sort of villainous arc is very different from the rest of the movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I loved the movie when he was there.
Yeah.
And when he was not there, I definitely felt his absence.
Yeah.
Because I was drawn to him. I was drawn to his sweaty, bloody, frantic atmosphere. Like his charisma.
His con man charisma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. Like I was just drawn to like the sweaty anxiousness.
Oh my gosh. Like this is a way to live a life. Yeah. Wow.
You know what's better than that? More. No, so Wonder Woman 1984, I liked a little bit more than the original Wonder Woman simply because it was, we had a big like discussion prior to this podcast, but I liked it more because it was more interesting than the original Wonder Woman. It wasn't a typical superhero movie that I was used to. It was bizarre, not for all good reasons, but it was different. And I really liked different things in genres I'm used to.
How does this rank in terms of DC movies for you?
DC movies are hard. Obviously, Shazam is the best. Shazam just blows everything out of the water. It's because it's actually like a good movie.
DC Extended Universe. Like
the DCEU. Yeah. And then after that, I think it's definitely like Aquaman for me, because Aquaman's at least fun if it's not good.
Yeah.
And then this is probably not third, because third, I think you would probably just give to the original Wonder Woman just because it braved a new trail and it was something different than other things, even if it followed a similar pattern. And then I would probably put it at number 4.
Okay.
And then everything else, just skip 2 places and then just throw them all way in the back of the heap where no one cares. But it must be said, Man of Steel is the first in that list, the highest up, and Suicide Squad is the very last. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
So the first and the bottom of a garbage heap.
Yes. Yeah, Suicide Squad is as low as I could possibly make it in any ranking.
It's like rotting mold growing on it.
And then below that, Suicide Squad. Yeah. With no redeeming value at all.
Nice.
Yeah. But moving into that, I think we need to talk about 2 of the biggest, splashiest movies in this year of no movies. I think we are going to talk about Tenet and Mank. Which one would you guys like to go with first?
Let's just get Tenet out of the way.
Let's get Tenet out of the way. Jesse, give us your thoughts on Tenet.
My word. Okay. So
and make them brief.
Me and my wife, we've seen every Chris Nolan movie. We've liked them, at least liked them all. We go into this movie. We're so excited. We'd had a rough day with the kids. We turn it on, and there's some action stuff that happens, and then some dialogue that happens. And then the dialogue happened, and I did not have subtitles on. So what happened, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to turn on the subtitles. I later found out by Googling that through my specific Roku app, I needed to go through the TV itself in order to turn it on, basically, not through the app, which is very weird.
That's really backwards.
Yeah. I've never had that happen before.
I'm really sorry you had that experience.
So me and my wife just kept looking at each other, like asking, like, what did they say? And just kept shrugging. And for like 20 minutes, we just kept doing this, like, kept on saying, like, did you catch that? Like, what's going on? And then she just looks at me and says, I'm leaving. And she went to bed. She couldn't sleep because I was listening to the movie so loudly. But instead of coming out and finishing the movie with me, she just like
she was like, I'd rather not do this.
Yeah. Oh my word. And so that itself, so the audio is such a huge issue for this movie because like it relies, there's so much exposition.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, or else you have like no connection to the characters. And what happened to me is I think I talked about this on a future episode. With Chris Nolan movies, he gets you so engaged with the plot. It's almost like a misdirection for some other minor issues that you could take up with for his movies. If you actually dig into them, you can find all sorts of problems, right? So that is kind of what I was left with. Because I heard some parts of the movie, like all the science fiction stuff. I actually understood all the parts that some people found confusing because the audio magically clears up then. And you can hear it all.
Abracadabra.
Yeah, so I heard all that. And then I was just left thinking about like plot issues and some pacing issues instead of enjoying a movie that I really wanted to enjoy. So yeah, at the end of the day, I just saw a mess. An amateur mess.
So I think for these 2, Tenet and Mank, as we move out of the mentions closer to the honorable mentions, I kind of want to like talk about a little bit of a rating. Out of 5 stars, what would you give Tenet?
The whole time I was watching this, I was reminded of this DVD I picked up this one time in the $5 bin at Walmart that had like 12 action movies on them.
Oh yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
And they were all some of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Nice.
And I was thinking,
I count that as like a win.
I was thinking this could frontline. So the particular DVD I had Equilibrium on there.
Oh, the movie blows.
I love Equilibrium. Do not talk trash about
that movie. Sucks.
Wonderful movie.
It sucks. What a terrible Matrix ripoff.
It's so great. Love it.
Yeah,
it's great in that it's so bad.
But I was thinking Tenet is for me is that level. That's what I saw. I would rate this like a 1.5.
Oh, well, I think given that the 1.5 star rating, I think you're going to find a lot of commonality with Mike.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to read the dumpster fire that I put in our text chain off, although I could, and it would all be still true.
Debatable.
but I did not like this movie. I rarely actively dislike something, but this movie, like, my wife and I watched this together and we were excited to see it. Visually, it's really cool, but we were laughing our asses off the entire time. We thought it was hilarious how tropey it was, how uninteresting it was, and how and I mean, just like it doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I get all of the sci-fi stuff that Christopher Nolan does in it. It's not like that doesn't make sense, but it's just, I think it was a worthless movie in all honesty, and that's all that I really need to say about it.
I couldn't disagree more with either of my co-hosts. Not that I think that this is a work of brilliance. I don't. I think it's plagued by a lot of issues. The same issues that have plagued Nolan in the past with some revisions. I think that he focused a little bit more on Elizabeth Debicki as his female character. And I say that, and it sounds as awkward as it should, because he does have a female character that he does put some work towards. And congratulations, good job. You finally did it. You wrote a female character that didn't seem like just a joke on its face. But if you think about it, it is a joke. And I think that is some evolution, that's some growth towards having a woman character that has an agency.
I mean, I kind of felt like it was a joke on its face, but
it's not. Okay. It's because it's different than any other woman character that he's written. She's not one-dimensional. She's two-dimensional, and that means she's flat. And that's the only praise I want to push on that. Like, she's not Rebecca Hall in The Prestige, which I thought was if you cast a shadow on it, it's two-dimensional. But apart from that, it's one. And this one at least had some work. There was clearly an intention here. Whether or not that worked, that's up to you as the viewer. A lot of the time travel stuff and the sequences really did work for me. I like Chris Nolan's way of telling stories. I feel very connected to it. And this one felt very of a piece with Dunkirk, in as much as he's writing this solo. It's not with Jonathan, and Jonathan is very much a calming presence on his stories. Jonathan focuses a lot on the characters. He's a very human writer. And Chris Nolan is much more, at his core, a situational writer. He likes to write these big sci-fi concepts into stories that incidentally star people. You know, Chris Nolan's best movies are co-written by somebody else. That is true of this as well. This is not one of his best movies. It is one that I really enjoyed, and I thought made enough sense for me to enjoy. It's not an opinion shared by my co-host, but this is also not a podcast where we're going to break down Tenet and talk about what works and not. This is really just our personal impressions. And my personal impression of Tenet is, when I watched it, again, with subtitles, my first time, super excited to see it. I walked away going, wow, I really liked that. And it made sense to me. It made sense to me so much so that in what Mike referred to as our dumpster fire of a text chain, I actually had to stop kind of responding to things because the hatred was just like too great. And I don't think this movie is deserving of hatred. I also don't think it's deserving of love. I just think that either you like what it's doing or you don't. And that's where it lies.
Well, if you watch it with subtitles, I'm sure you can get that. Otherwise, like, we actually had a phone conversation right after.
It's true.
Me and Vito watched it at the same time.
Yeah,
and then
we synced up.
Yeah, we called each other and talked about it. And I had to ask him, like, very basic plot points. I understood the sci-fi stuff. I just didn't understand why any character was doing anything at any particular moment.
Jesse's like, why is that guy there? And I said, oh, he said it in this thing. And he said this. And Jesse's like, oh.
Actually, the audio was so bad. I was so confused at the beginning. I thought the main character was kind of a psychopath.
Was the bad guy?
Basically, I thought he wanted to murder poor people.
Yeah.
I thought he wanted to murder poor people in the stadium. Like, and it's the opposite. In all reality, he's trying to save them all. Like, that set me up for like a weird ride, because I was just like, Chris Nolan, he's done like sort of an anti-hero sort of thing before. So like an amoral CIA agent, I can see it.
I'm here for it.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that instead of like his usual principal protagonist.
I feel like I would have enjoyed that movie a lot more than this movie.
So in the book, The Nolan Variations by Tom Schoen, he talks about Nolan's process a lot, like what it is that he's trying to do. And Nolan is obsessed with getting audiences to engage with his movies outside of conventional means. and that has worked both for good and for ill in his movies. I think here it can be objectively said that by burying dialogue that's important for the audience to hear inside of his sound mix, it's for ill. I say that as someone that liked the movie and enjoyed it, but this was the wrong call. But I also see an auteur who, with his 9th movie, I think, is like, he's flexing in a way that other auteurs have before, but in a much more radical, progressive way. He has so much power in the Hollywood system, and he's able to explore these things that he's always wanted to. Like it's very much like ego unchecked. And I don't think that's necessarily bad, but in this iteration, it is not. He's working against himself. It's not actually what he wants to put out. He wants people to engage with this movie, and he's trying to do it through visuals. And it does work in some way because, like you're saying, you're able to follow the sci-fi stuff, but it doesn't work in other ways, specifically where you need to hear someone talk.
Which is frequently in that movie.
Frequently. It's definitely a one eye blind kind of decision. Like he's got one eye set upon his visuals and he has no eye on his audio. And that's very clear because with the subtitles, the movie really did make sense to me. I got it.
That's funny. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that he was actually doing the audio stuff on purpose. And actually, and that becomes more clear because I understood the sci-fi stuff, which also involved talking, a lot of talking at times.
But the visuals are so strong. You're like, oh, I get it. He steps in the thing and it flips. Boom, we're here.
Right. So there was a mixture of visuals and sometimes just straight audio. But that was when the audio magically cleared up. Right. So I got so mad at that. I was just like, dude, how can you are clearly self-aware. You know what you're doing. I don't know how anybody could choose to do this. I was actually so mad at Nolan that I wanted to like boycott him for a little while after seeing this. I've forgiven him a little bit.
I think it really is, though. I think you're right. It is a case of a creator with his head really far up his own ass.
Oh, so far.
But it's also reading this book by Tom Schoen, which is very much in conjunction with Nolan. It features constant interviews and interspersals with Nolan about what Tom is writing. It feels very much of a piece with his growth as a creator. And I don't mean that to defend him. I just really mean it just makes sense that someone that thinks this would get here. And you would get to the almost complete, like he wanted to shoot Dunkirk with no script, and that's insane. And everyone said that was insane. He said, okay, here's a 60-page treatment of my 2-hour movie. Treatment, no dialogue. And there's almost no dialogue that's really discernible or important in Dunkirk, except that spoken by Mark Rylance.
And that's when you can actually do the audio thing. You can use talking to create an ambiance in the film.
Right. But I see this as the next step in that. Like, I did this period piece where it's clear what everything's doing. Let me do my sort of movie with that same kind of idea. And it doesn't work here. It doesn't work here. You need the subtitles to understand what's happening. And even if you do, like what Mike was saying, you might not even like it then. This is an incredibly polarizing movie. And I think that from us here, like I like this movie. I actually like it a good deal and I can't wait to watch it again. But I also understand all the criticisms with it and I concede to them wholeheartedly, with the exception that it's not stupid. It's not stupid and you're wrong for thinking that.
Well, some of us like good movies, I guess.
I do. But we must talk about Mank. We originally planned to do Mank as a new release episode because it's David Fincher. Mm-hmm. And I was really excited. This was probably my most... I wanted to see this in Tenet the most this year.
I did more research for Mank than I've done for most other movies pre-watch.
Yeah, same. Like a ton. And Sean Fennessy and Amanda Dobbins with The Big Picture at The Ringer covered this extensively. It's Sean Fennessy's favorite movie of the year. Mm-hmm. And I remember just walking into it, not with hype, but just thinking, I love David Fincher. I love his movies. I expect a level of quality here. And I was given a level of quality that is comparable to his other movies. It is a very well-made film. It's beautifully shot. The black and white, while it annoys the piss out of me, is beautifully filmed. Like, I wish it wasn't in black and white. I don't hate movies in black and white. Like, I think Roma is a beautiful film in black and white. And this one, it felt like a gimmick. It felt like a gimmick the whole time. It didn't feel like it had to be. I don't know why it was trying to ape the Citizen Kane. I didn't connect with the characters. I didn't connect emotionally. Like, I gave it a 3-star rating simply on the basis of the work of Gary Oldman, Amanda Seyfried, David Fincher. That's it. They worked so hard on this movie and they did their jobs with the exception of making me care.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I have to say, Mank, one of the most disappointing movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Bar none. Bar none. The way you feel about Tenet, Mike, is how I feel about Mank. I don't think it's stupid, but I think it misses the mark. And whatever mark it had that it wanted to hit, it didn't communicate that to me.
Yeah. Well, I had actually watched Citizen Kane the night before watching Mank. And, I'd never seen Citizen Kane before. And Mank is based off of, like, the writer of Citizen Kane.
Yeah, so Mank. So the storyline of Mank is that it's about Herman Mankiewicz, who is the co-writer of Citizen Kane, widely recognized as the greatest film ever made. He made it with Orson Welles. There was a large dispute over who wrote what or what happened because of whom on the movie. It's actually profiled in Pauline Kael's book, and it's also profiled in several documentaries that you can watch. And this is Herman Mankiewicz's side. It's written by Jack Fincher, David Fincher's father, who died some 18 years before this project reached completion. He's been trying to make it since then and before. It's a passion project. It's deeply in his blood. But it's about this struggle of Herman Mankiewicz, renowned socialite, screenwriter, drunk.
Yeah, very, very drunk. The entire movie. That's basically Mank. It's about a drunk guy who's writing Citizen Kane. And like I said, I'd seen Citizen Kane the night before. And Citizen Kane is primarily about a guy. It's about his life, but he says a mysterious word at the end of his life. And everybody's trying to figure out what that word means. Rosebud.
Rosebud.
Yeah. The whole movie. And that's the hook, right? It's the reporters going around, and as they're interviewing people, it goes to flashbacks. So you get an impression of the Citizen Kane's life. And then you finally figure out what Rosebud is. But that's the hook. And this movie, Mank, it was missing the hook. There was nothing. There was no mystery.
I didn't give a shit at any point. I didn't care.
Yes. Yeah. There's no reason for it. And I couldn't figure out, like, in Citizen Kane, I think without the Rosebud thing, I think I would also have said the same thing. And this was it was Citizen Kane without Rosebud. And it was like, okay, this dude lived. He died, I guess.
He had a car accident. He had a broken leg. Crippling alcoholism. He convinced everyone around him that he was a great, great guy. He was writing it with his secretary. He has kind of like had a platonic affair. His wife was cool with it, but also, not. And like,
also,
like, why does it matter?
With the exception of him in an automobile accident breaking his leg, it seemed like every significant part of this guy's life. Oh, with the one other exception, which I won't spoil.
Yeah, that's fair.
It seemed like we were focusing on the most mundane parts of this guy's life.
I don't think that Herman Mankiewicz was a guy that was screaming out for a biopic treatment. And this movie seems to be inventing reasons why this story mattered, even though it's such a high profile and legendary Hollywood story that you can find it in more complete form. That's actually, just to spoil this a little bit, historically accurate, which this movie is not. From the ground up, I don't like this movie, even though I respect the craftsmanship that went into it. I respect the work that Gary Oldman, and again, I want to say this, Amanda Seyfried, she unveils a part of herself that I did not think that was there. I'm just going to say that right out. I did not think that she had this capacity as an actress, and she's phenomenal. She's magnetic in this. Like, she's one of the best parts of a movie I don't like, and I loved her in it.
And Gary Oldman is great.
He is great. He's 30 years older than Mank's supposed to be. But he is great because it's Gary Oldman. How could he not be?
Yeah. I mean, it was fun to watch him, but again, not interesting. And last thing I want to say, I was very disappointed because I'm not a fan of William Hurst. I don't really know.
You don't like Charles Dance?
But he's one of those fascinating figures. Like, there's Hearst Castle in California, which
Malibu.
Yeah, in Malibu. I've been there numerous times. It's fascinating to be there. There are like zebras on the freeway.
Yeah.
Because he placed them there, and he's just such a crazy figure. And this movie has him in there, and he's sort of a big deal, but
he's kind of not.
I don't understand him in the movie. I don't really understand besides one scene why he's really there.
He talks so little. Like there's a couple of notable scenes. Like he's the one where they're talking about socialism and capitalism, and there's the head of the MGM Studios that's there, and they have this big debate. And then there's another one again but Mank shows up drunk to the dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And he antagonizes everyone and pushes away everyone because of his rampant alcoholism and just him being kind of an asshole, but also having real beef with Louis B. DeMare, Louis Mayer, and then with William Randall Hearst. And there's this antagonizing that he's doing, and he's driving away everyone at the party. It's incredibly uncomfortable. And finally, Mayer is just like, you know who's been paying you, right? It's this guy. He doesn't like how you write. He likes how you talk. And then there's the myth of the organ grinder's monkey that comes into play. And that resolution, that scene really worked for me. And that was like the clincher. And I really liked that. I really responded to that. But all in all, I think we can say safely that Mank was a miss for us emotionally. Just not into it. Didn't like it. No.
So I think we should move on to the honorable mentions instead of just the mentions.
I think Mike, I think you had an honorable mention that I think is really interesting.
The movie that I really thought was very good, but not great, not top 5, was Another Round by Thomas Vinterberg. Yeah, starring Mads Mikkelsen and a bunch of other Danish actors, I think.
Very much.
It's a really weird movie in a lot of ways.
What's it about?
It's a very joyful movie, which is really weird, about 5 teachers, or 5 or 4 teachers, whose lives are kind of like stalled. They're basically having a midlife crisis, and they read a study by a psychologist that the human body is 0.05% too low in blood alcohol content. And so they decide to start
day drinking competition.
An experiment where they would go through their work life at 0.05% more. They keep their blood alcohol content at 0.05%. This, of course, they decide to push that up. And it goes over the course of, I think, a semester or a year of school, and sort of their dip into alcoholism through that, and then sort of the ways their lives break down through it, then the way they kind of come back up at the end. It's really weird, like super weird.
Is it weird?
It's weird.
I'm trying to get a sense of this movie. Is it about alcoholism?
It's not. It's like, that's what I mean. It's kind of hard to put my finger exactly on what it's about. I guess it's kind of about like the monkey's paw idea. Like there's a talisman that will change
Wonder
your
Woman
life.
1984.
Yeah, exactly. Something that will change your life. It's Wonder Woman 1984, pretty much.
With Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah, and drinking. But also, you have to pay a terrible price. But it's weird about that terrible price. It's weird about the whole movie is strange. There we go. I got a different word, because the price it's paid is strange and unexpected, and it becomes a joyful movie unexpectedly. You kind of expect this movie to be, very much a warning about alcohol, and it's not really. The way the movie ends is just. I don't know if it would be an honorable mention without the ending, which is,
I've been talked about. It's
been talked about by everybody, but Mads Mikkelsen does a dance that is just incredible. It comes kind of like it's coming. It's unexpected, and it's just so full of life. I've never been really into dance. At no point in my life have I been like, oh, dance is the artistic expression that I understand and feel in any way. Since having daughters, I've been trying to understand a little bit more, because they love dancing. It's how they express their joy. And so I've been a little bit more open to it and trying to see that. And then seeing Mads Mikkelsen do that in this movie, I was like, oh man, I can see it. I can see how that's it is sort of a way in for me. That art that I never really explored.
That's definitely, this is a movie I really wanted to see, because Thomas Vinterberg, has worked with Mads Mikkelsen before on The Hunt. I think probably most well known.
Yeah.
Even that's not really that well known. But this is definitely a movie that's been making the rounds on like film Twitter and film Facebook. Yeah. I'm really excited to see it. I'm happy to hear, as I usually am, I'm happy to hear a slightly mixed review.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's worth seeing. It's not what I expected at all.
I like that. That's a strong plus for me to watch something.
Okay.
It's unexpected. It's different.
It's way happier than I expected.
I like that.
Expect a lot more joy.
I love that.
Think,
that's great, because I kind of thought it was going to be like really sad.
Yeah, no, it's not sad at all. Which is like, I'm kind of disappointed.
It's kind of the problem.
that's kind of why I say it's weird. It's not sad.
Well, maybe to loop that in with my honorable mention, because it's actually about some similar things. Is I wanted to mention Steve McQueen's second episode of his mini series, quote unquote. It's being considered only for Emmys, but they're definitely movies. It's his Amazon Prime show, Small Axe. He's released 6, I believe, feature-length episodes, the first 2 of which have garnered a lot of attention this year. One is Mangrove with Letitia Wright, and the second is Lover's Rock, which, as far as I know, is starring mostly unknown people, and that's the one I want to talk about. I want to talk about Lover's Rock because this was something that was entirely unexpected to me. I did not think that I could experience this kind of movie. It's, first of all, it's very experimental in that there is a plot, there is a storyline, but it's very buried, and it's only important kind of in the beginning, small bits of it in the middle, and then at the end. It's only about 70 minutes long, a little bit over 70 minutes. And I was almost more moved by this than almost any other movie this year. Lover's Rock is about a party. It's about a party. It's about a party in London in the late 70s, early 80s. It's about a party about this genre, Lover's Rock, which is founded in Jamaican music, in rocksteady, in reggae, in a little bit in ska. And it's about this community of Black people coming together to dance and to feel a sense of community. It's about these 2 lovers finding each other in it and their conversation. And it's about the people at the party, the gatekeeper, the door guy, who is making sure that no outside influences can enter. It's about the creep at the party who's taking advantage of people that he beguiles to trust him. It's about the DJ that's trying to get his music off the ground by playing it at these parties through old like records and vinyl that he scratches and remixes on the fly. It's everything that you've never seen in a party movie. You know, there's an episode of Community where the TV show Community, where Abed, one of the characters, a filmmaker, is trying to film the best party. And he's roving around a party just saying, all right, you party, 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 and you party, 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 party like it's the end of the world. No, harder, party more. And I get the sense from this that Steve McQueen, you know, the director of things like 12 Years a Slave and Widows, he didn't have to say that. There's a sequence in the movie that is entirely impromptu that lasts for almost 9 minutes in a steady, uncut take that in interviews later he said was entirely improvised by his actors, given the material he had in the scene. And he wanted it to happen in the scene, but he didn't tell anybody that he wanted it. And they made it happen. And it's beautiful. I was swept off my feet. It's one of the most romantic things I've ever seen. I don't like romance in movies because it seems so cheesy and stupid. It doesn't feel like real romance, and this felt real. This movie, Lover's Rock, felt like real life to me. It felt like parties I've been to. It felt like dances I've been to. It felt like music I've listened to. And it was so, there's a moment, the great film critic, Adam Naiman, pointed it out. He said, there's a moment where the walls seem to perspire with sweat. And it's true, they do. I don't want to heap too much effusive praise on it, but this is one of the movies that everyone should seek out. Lover's Rock. It's part of the Steve McQueen's Small Axe series on Amazon Prime.
Fantastic. Yeah. So my honorable mention is Invisible Man, which really took me by surprise because I read the synopsis. You know, the basic story is...
You know Invisible Man.
Yeah, I know the Invisible Man. I saw those old black and whites when he has the gauze all over him and he takes it off. And
why is he wearing sunglasses? Who knows?
Yeah. He doesn't need the darn sunglasses. Yeah, and those were really cheesy, but kind of fun to watch with my family growing up. So, but I've never watched anything Invisible Man related again. And this movie comes up, and the story is that rich boyfriend, girlfriend trying to get out of his clutches because she thinks he's too controlling. So
he is too controlling.
Yes.
He is.
Yes, he is too controlling of her life, and she escapes his manor, leaves, and then he dies and leaves her a bunch of stuff. And then, of course, it's the Invisible Man, so that means he's going to haunt her, basically. So when I heard that synopsis, I was like, well, this is just a recipe for tons of sexual assault and rape, and I don't want to see that.
We all know about Hollow Man, like with Kevin Bacon. Like we've seen this done by Paul Verhoeven before. I'm not here for the sexual violence.
Yeah. And then there was like some scenes in the trailer where it's like her taking a shower. I'm like, oh, dude, this is so creepy. I don't want to see that movie. And then actually, Vito, you were the one telling me that it's not that. There aren't scenes of sexual assault.
There's not.
Or rape. And, kudos for a movie for not forcing that down everybody's throats.
Yeah, take a lesson from that, Game of Thrones, please.
Yeah, it's not even needed in this movie because it's so psychologically thrilling. Like, this man is haunting her. Or is he? Is she just going crazy?
Yeah.
Because, this movie is entirely carried by Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah.
Who, dude, she's like the only one in a room reacting to an invisible man. Right? Reacting to essentially a ghost.
How terrifying is that?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like what Jesse's saying is that imagine you're in a room and maybe you're in a room with other people, but you are being tormented by an invisible person. And because they're invisible, no one will acknowledge that anything weird is happening. It's just, you bumped that. Oh, he bumped that. Who knows? There's a rational explanation for this. It's like Scooby-Doo, except that she knows that her abuser is out there. She thinks that she knows for a fact that this is happening.
She thinks she knows for a fact, but is she just going crazy? Who knows?
Yeah. Watch the movie.
And like, it's just so amazing because like, there's nobody else in a room with her. It's just this one actress, and everything that could be happening in the room is conveyed simply through her face.
Yes.
Oh, and this is just it's like a wild ghost movie in a lot of ways.
It's like the most you could do with no money, right?
Yeah.
And there's like several standout sequences where it's just like, it's clear. It could be done just like a rope off screen, just pulling something. But through the character, through the perspective of the person you're watching this through, like you believe it's something.
Yeah.
It could be something. It could not be. I don't want to spoil it. Yeah. I just think that like everything that this movie does, like especially the sequence, remember when she is alone and she goes out to the kitchen?
Oh, yeah.
That is like a bravura sequence where Elizabeth Moss is alone on screen for minutes on end, reacting to the horror of an environment that's turned hostile.
Oh my word. Yeah, she carries this whole movie. I'm not sure if she'll win Best Actress, but I sincerely hope she does.
Yeah.
The whole movie is completely carried just on her, and she does an amazing job.
If she doesn't, it's the second year in a row that she's been snubbed. The first being from last year, Her Smell, that she carries that movie on her back. And especially like this year, she has Invisible Man and Shelley, which came out within a few months of each other. Shelley just barely missed my honorable mention. She carries that movie too. She is a force of nature when it comes to the screen, and she eats up her scenery like almost few have ever done.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. I love Invisible Man. It's not going to be like a regular just because of the subject matter. It's just it's so intense.
That doesn't get turned on Sunday afternoon.
Oh, no. Not at all.
At the Jesse household.
No, but there is, moving into the top 5, there is another movie that will be on the Sunday afternoon in my household. Yeah, so it's Emma.
Directed by Autumn DeWilde, starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Johnny Flynn.
Yeah, this movie was so pleasantly surprising. First off, I read the Emma book and I hate that story. I've seen the Gwyneth Paltrow and didn't like that. And then this comes along and it's so nice and colorful. And I actually, for all my hating of that Emma story and reading that book, like, I actually got more out of this movie. I enjoyed that story now because I've seen this portrayal of it with these characters and the way they choose to emphasize things. And it's so cinematically beautiful to watch. It's like
candy, man.
I would like to say, a friend of the podcast, Mary, if you're listening, Mary described and sold this movie to me as saying, this movie is like dessert. It's delicious.
It really is, man. A really good dessert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like what you're saying, like, Jesse, I actually really do like Jane Austen adaptations. I really like Jane Austen just as a writer, but Emma was never a story I connected with. I was kind of sitting there going like, oh, I can't wait till Emma gets what's coming to her for interfering with everyone's lives.
Yeah.
But this one, I don't know if it was Anya Taylor-Joy's performance. I don't know if it was the writing. I don't know if it was just the colorful, like, punk rock kind of way it was directed while also being a costume drama. But I was involved. I was invested. I cared.
Yeah.
And I cared deeply, and I cared in every scene. And the longer the movie went, the more I cared. And now, like, something that me and my wife like quote to each other when we're sitting down, like watching a movie or reading books or anything, is one of us will just look at the other one and say, like, I feel a draft.
That's so awesome. I felt the same way. I have read this book. I love most of Jane Austen that I've read, and I really disliked Emma, like the story, the book. But this movie made me
where's Persuasion at? I love Persuasion. Let's just do that one.
I mean, this movie made me appreciate the Emma story, and I was like, oh, I get what's happening. This actually helped me to understand the story better than I had before, which I think is kind of the best outcome from an adaptation, when you get more out of the story than you did in the book, and you can go back to the book and actually enjoy the book.
Yeah. I really like that. I'd actually like to use that as a slight launching pad for just a very tiny digression, which is, especially with Jane Austen, Jane Austen has rabid fans that are like gatekeepers for whether or not you can enjoy this interpretation of this movie based on how true it is to the book. Most people will tell you that the Keira Knightley, Joe Wright version of Pride and Prejudice is like quote unquote garbage, but you need to watch the 6-hour A&E version simply because of its adherence to the original source material. And this is something that really bothers me, because movies and books are not the same. And quite clearly, they don't need to do the same things. I love it when a movie can make me reevaluate a book or give me a fresh perspective on it. And that's what I needed for the story of Emma. I needed something new and different to be brought to the table. I didn't need the classic tale told again in the same way, because that wasn't working for me. I could not connect with this story. But I loved what they did here. Similarly, like I loved what Joe Wright did with Pride and Prejudice back in the day. Like, he managed to condense what A&E couldn't condense in 4 to 6 hours into a beautiful 2-hour cohesive movie that hung together, made sense to me, like fleshed out its characters and brought catharsis to me. Like, I appreciate an adaptation that forgets what isn't necessary to a story. And I think that Emma does that. I think Emma does it perfectly. Mm-hmm. It tells me what I need to know and then digs deep into that.
Yeah. And I would also like to say that I am not a Jane Austen fan in any way. I don't really like those movies. I watched them with my sister growing up. She just spent like the whole day just watching that Pride and Prejudice. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I love that thing, man. It's so good. It's so good. I
can't stand it.
I can't stand it either.
It gets on my nerves. Yeah. But I think what separates this movie from at least from that adaptation was, like, in that adaptation, it's like you're presented with these characters and this way of life, and just you're instantly supposed to like it. Whereas this one, I don't know what it is, but it's almost like they slowly start to draw you into this way of living and this Victorian household gentry families. Like,
it draws you into like the small details. Like, we've been joking off mic about, Johnny Flynn's ass in this movie when he's getting changed, but it kind of makes sense because he's a nobleman that insists upon walking. He would sully his clothes. He'd get dirty. He'd get muddy, get sweaty. And then also, like, Emma backing up to a fireplace and lifting up her dress because it must be really cold because they only have fireplaces. And I know those fireplaces. And you know what? Benjamin Franklin was right. The Franklin stove is the way to heat a space and not a hearth. It's stuff like that. Autumn to Wild sort of draws you into the nitty gritty of the experience to humanize these characters.
It's an interesting dichotomy because, I mean, it's so rich with colors and with patterns. We were talking, I mean, it's almost like a Wes Anderson film in terms of the structure of the shots, but then there's so much depth to it in terms of the richness of the atmosphere. But it's almost more rich than you'd expect than any period piece I've ever seen in that way. But in the same time, it brings that nitty gritty to the actions of the characters. You kind of get a sense of smell while you're watching it. Like, things don't really smell that good, even though they look really pretty. Which is really cool. Like, it's just really cool how she did it in a way that I haven't seen it before. Yeah, that colorfulness, like, again, going back to the other Jane Austen adaptations that I've seen, everybody's always dressed in, like, beige or white or black. And this time, like, Mr. Knightley, he's got, like, a bright yellow coat on. Yeah. Right? He's still dressed in period attire, but, like, everything is so brightly colored. Her carriage is, I think it's yellow and blue. Like, everything is very striking
and visually very pleasing.
Like
to
especially
watch on
like in
screen.
the church scenes, right?
Oh,
When
yeah.
you see all the beautiful like garments and but it's all visually distinctive. It's very, it's pastel, but it's also contrasting, which I really love. It takes a deep sense of the color spectrum to realize what colors will reflect other colors, and then use those to your advantage to make everyone just like pop. And everything in this movie just pops all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's like blood from a nose or whether it's just a man walking through a green field. Like it's visually sumptuous.
Yeah. It's a treat for the eyes.
It's a treat for the eyes and it's a treat for the ears. And I'm so happy that we have Emma at number 5.
Yeah. Well, and just as a note, I've got a weird sort of personal connection to this that I didn't realize until I started watching it. This is her first feature film. She came up through being a music photographer, and I really
How many music videos at first have you seen?
Oh, I don't know. Probably not that many, but I know her because of Elliott Smith.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Elliott Smith fan, and I was from high school. Rest in peace, man. But I think she shoots the Son of Sam video for him, which is this really cool video that's all in black and white except for a balloon that's red from the beginning. And I think that was one of her first music videos. She's playing with that, like the differences in color and dichotomies there, making something pop. Obviously, red is very different from black and white. But so it was weird to see her make this movie, which is not like Elliott Smith. This isn't an Elliott Smith movie. You know, it's not garage sort of sad singer-songwriter, along with Johnny Flynn, who is also someone I knew as a singer-songwriter. So it's just really cool to see them all together doing this story. Emma, I've loved Jane Austen since I was a kid as well. So for it all to come together like this was neat. Yeah,
I definitely feel that. I think that as far as costume dramas go, this is where I would like them to go. This is, I think the future is, and it's what I've always wanted. And I think it's what Joe Wright I think he kind of put the capstone on it. He said, this is how you do the classical costume drama. And I think Emma kind of comes in as saying, this is the new wave.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do things going forward. In that way, in a way that no one is going to do going forward. I think we're reaching our number 4.
Yeah.
Which is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Written and directed by Charlie Kaufman and starring Jesse Plemons and Jessie Buckley, as well as David Thewlis and Toni Collette in supporting roles. I didn't preface Emma with a story synopsis, but I'm going to preface I'm Thinking of Ending Things with a small story synopsis. Just, it's a man and a woman who are dating are heading to his parents' house for the weekend in the winter. Along the way, the woman is ruminating about her future with this man, and she is saying, I'm thinking of ending things. She doesn't have the courage on the trip. And it's about her meeting of the parents and this very surreal kind of existential crisis that occurs within her and within her boyfriend about their relationship and eventually and quite clearly about existence itself. This is a very introspective movie. It really, and I mean this, it really is not for everyone. This is one of the most polarizing things I think I've ever seen.
It's so weird.
And proudly so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
bravely so.
But I will say, number one, I love this movie. I've seen this movie. I saw this movie twice in one week. I connected deeply to this because of just these intense emotions that I had about it. It's hard to talk about because anything that you say after the first 20 minutes is a spoiler. What they encounter, what they think, and then after what they encounter, what they're thinking there, and where they go from there, and what classic Hollywood musical involves that.
Yeah.
You know,
well, it's weird, like, to even talk about a setting. Where is this movie set? I don't know. A lot of places, but also very disconnectedly.
It's definitely winter. There's definitely flatlands.
Yeah.
On the drive to his parents' house.
Yeah.
It could be like the Midwest somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it does say at some point what state. But even beyond that, like,
it doesn't really.
There's a journey that happens in the characters. There's a journey that happens that's about meaning and existence and life and what we're supposed to gather from it.
Yeah.
There's a lot about self-loathing and humiliation. And there's a lot about finding your own self and who that might be, and do you like them?
Yeah.
So, as someone who has not seen this movie, I have a question. Are any of those questions resolved? Is this like a story where you're going to find some answers, or is it just leaving you with the question?
What constitutes an answer?
Well, I don't know. I thought that was pretty self-manifest.
Well, I think it answers the questions that it cares about.
I don't even know, man. This movie's trippy.
It can be definitely like kind of psychedelic in a lot of ways, but it's also not interested in giving you a head trip. It's trippy in its story because the story is very reliant upon a non-cohesive, non-linear narrative.
Yeah.
But it also is not interested in letting you know on how linear the narrative is.
It's asking really big questions in really interesting ways. I don't know if it gives you an answer exactly, but I don't think of that in a negative way at all. And I also don't think that it doesn't give you an answer. It's hard to say.
So I think with this, what it does tell you is it tells you a lot about self-loathing and how that hatred can bleed out into your personal relationships and poison them and change them and also alter the fate of your life in a lot of big, meaningful ways. It doesn't, there's no hopeful message here in that, oh, well, don't hate yourself. It's better this way. But it's more an exploration into the loneliness that humans feel. And I think that especially in this year, I hate when people say that, but I have to, especially in this year where we're all so lonely and disconnected from each other and just yearning for genuine human contact. When I did see this, the way it delved deep, it reminded me of how alone I used to feel, when I was a lot younger and didn't know anything and didn't have anyone to rely on. It brought me back to a very like primal emotional state about how to think of things and the way that time passes and how to take advantage of that if you want to. And if you don't, well, that's a whole other choice that you make. And this is what life leads you to. It's a very complex work that invites you to ask a lot of questions about how you live your life and what you feel and think.
Yeah, it's more personal than something that's going to say, like, I have an answer to something.
Yeah, it has no answers.
I don't know about that. I think it's too personal to say that.
I would say it has no answers because it's simply not interested in giving you answers.
Yeah. But I feel like that's too, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a cop-out. It's like, oh, it doesn't have an answer because it's not interested. Like, it might, I guess. But it's for you.
It's true. That's true.
I think that's I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to say, Jesse Plemons and David Thewlis, like, for some reason this year, I've seen them in a lot of things. I watched the second and third seasons of Fargo this year, which have Jesse Plemons and David Thewlis in them. And they're swiftly becoming two of my favorite actors.
I mean, also,
they're amazing.
David Thewlis, Wonder Woman,
Well, yeah, and he's in Wonder Woman. Like, he's freaking great. And then I realized he's Lupin.
Yeah,
he's Lupin. That just like blew my mind because he is not Lupin in Fargo season 3. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
No, I think to close I think we have to close the conversation of I'm thinking of anythings because if you're going to watch it, I hope that our enigmatic speaking of it has only interested you in the movie and not turned you off to it.
Yeah.
There's simply no way to talk about this movie without spoiling it. And we're not here to do that.
Yeah.
It's so cool how it's interested in very big questions. It's a movie for you to think about and to experience, and I think it's really, really valuable.
Yeah,
I cried a couple times near the end, and it just moved me deeply. Another movie that moved me deeply is our number 3 pick. I was just floored by. I think I'm probably the biggest fan of this here. And I definitely, I don't mean that as a denigration to my co-hosts. I simply mean this worked for me really well. It's Da 5 Bloods. It's Spike Lee's movie about 5 Vietnam vets or 4?
Well, it's ultimately, Chadwick Boseman is the 5th.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and his son, so 6. Yeah. Not Chadwick Boseman's son, Delroy Lindo's son.
Oh, yeah.
So 4 vets.
4 vets, one son and one dead man. It's 4 Vietnam vets going back to Vietnam. They're all black, and they are seeking their kind of captain, their leader.
They're seeking to recover his body,
who fell in combat.
Yes,
but in addition to seeking out his body, and they know where it's buried, it's also buried alongside a lot of gold. that came from a helicopter crash that happened around the time that he died in the same skirmish. So these are all older men coming back to where they were young men in a foreign country where they sort of became themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then realizing sort of the distance that age and time bring with it and reckoning with that in our current political climate.
Yeah. That's a neat way of summarizing that.
Thank you.
So you're the biggest fan, and I probably am the least. I like this movie the least out of the three of us.
Fair.
First off, it took me a long time to watch this movie because it has "duh" as the first word of the title. And when I see movies like that as a Netflix original, I'm like, ooh, I'm staying far away from that.
Sure.
I think that's self-explanatory.
I think so.
Yeah.
This is very different from most movies that I think, or most things on Netflix that would begin with "duh."
It's just most different from most things.
Yeah, exactly. That's fair.
Yeah, it's very. I did enjoy it. I did really enjoy it, but it is kind of like all over the place. There's a lot of like, oh, what's going on in the '60s?
It's more Jackson Pollock than it is like Picasso.
Yeah,
there are monologues given straight to the camera, like Shakespeare style.
Yeah,
it's very weird.
There's also like real life Vietnam footage that opens the movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's a classic like Spike Lee thing now in his movies to blend real life footage into a fictional drama. But it opens the movie is the most horrific footage that you've ever seen of Vietnam played out. I mean, the most famous photographs are actually videoed. Yeah. And the opening credits of this movie show more murders, more war crimes than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, so you're seeing like there's a bunch of scenes like that, and then other weird stuff that are interspliced. I'm not going to get into all that, but the tight story of these buddies like coming back and like partying in Vietnam at first, and then like they're on a treasure hunt to gold. So just think about the dynamics that would cause, and it's so that part is super engaging. It's so interesting because the movie doesn't turn out. It doesn't work the way you would expect it to. It just keeps on turning into something slightly different than it was the previous scene.
That's what I love about it. I love that it's always changing. I love that the movie is like a constantly evolving organism. Like you think this is going to be a clear heist movie, and in anyone else's hands, this would turn into like Michael Mann in the Jungle. Like we're doing Heat in Vietnam.
Like part of why I love this movie was because it kept doing this unexpected, like you said, the unexpected thing. And those revelations that come out, they're all unexpected.
That's fair.
And it's part of what you're building. I don't know. I think it's part of how it builds as a movie, and why I think it's a good movie is because it's doing this thing where it's constantly like doing a trip step almost. It's tripping you up a little bit as you go. You're like, oh, I know where I am. No, I don't. I know where I am. No, I don't.
I hope it would encourage a listener out there to watch it. If you haven't watched it already, if you're turned off by the title, if you're turned off by just the marketing of it, you don't want to watch a Vietnam movie. You don't want to watch a war movie. This isn't that, but it also is.
It's also a father-son movie.
Very much so.
It's also very much like social commentary.
Also like incredible role by Jonathan Majors. Like he just does such a great, I mean, like talking about Lovecraft Country, he's also in that this year. And just his relationship with Delroy Lindo, like, oh my gosh. Delroy Lindo needs to get the Oscar now.
I think that
he did a fantastic job.
That father-son relationship, I think that's what sold me on this movie. And there's this one particular scene, which I just can't talk about, but that's when suddenly the movie just changes on a dime, and this whole plot is just turned upside down. And that's why I love this. That's why I really like this movie.
Yeah.
But it's all the craziness that you were describing that makes me say, I just wish that had been stripped away, and we had just had this crazy plot that was constantly turning in on itself a little bit.
I can see that. I feel like all the things that you could say are maybe not perfect about it are also things that make it good, which is weird. Like you could put them in both the pro and the con list in my mind, which is kind of fun. Like that's fun to be able to do that.
It's almost every criticism you can level against Spike is also a strength.
Yeah, it's really weird.
And it's just about whether or not that works for you here or it doesn't work for you. And it's very subjective, incredibly subjective. I'm not saying like objectively, this is a better movie than what you're saying, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's just about how you're receiving it. And I think that's how he'd want you to receive it. He wants there to be a conflict. He wants there to be a fight.
Yeah.
in you, because I think that's what great art does. Great art provokes conversation. Like we yada past Tenet and Mank because we could, but you can't yada past The Five Bloods.
You can't just be like, I watched it, it happened, whatever, I'm done.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh.
It demands attention. It demands it.
I kind of want to yada a little bit.
Right.
I mean, like, again, I think there are some stellar moments in the movie, and then there's a lot of stuff that just didn't grab me. Like, ultimately, like, it being a mishmash of a bunch of different things, it didn't end up being able to... It stopped me from being really immersed in the story that was being told.
But about what you liked, sort of it being number 3 on our list, like, what spoke to you?
It was definitely the father-son relationship, and then just the relationship with these buddies, and then their relationship it's different between every single one of them, and that was it was well told, it was well shown.
I don't want to spoil anything, but like the fight over the gun. Do you remember that when one of them discovers a gun in someone else's bag?
Freaking crazy,
oh,
dude.
Yeah, imagine that. You're on a quest for gold, and somebody has a gun.
Yeah.
One person.
Your buddies.
One person has a gun. What happened?
One guy brought a gun.
Isn't that crazy? That whole dynamic is what I love.
Nice.
And that's why it deserves to be number 3.
I'm very eager to talk about this, but number 2 is the Disney Pixar film Onward. There has been a lot said this year about Soul, and I think that a lot of that praise is misdirected to that movie. I don't want to slight Pete Docter. I don't want to slight any of the work that anyone ever did on that movie. They clearly poured their heart and soul into it. But honestly, Onward is a crown jewel. So Onward is a story starring Chris Pratt and Tom Holland of 2 elf brothers who need to find a way to get to a place where they can resurrect their dead father for 24 hours.
Yeah.
They partially do it. He is resurrected up to his belt, from his shoes to his belt. He is a pantsed leg.
Yeah.
He has 2 legs, and that's it. He cannot hear. He cannot speak. He's just legs.
And the clock is ticking, right?
Yes.
Because the spell that the father left them, as soon as they start it, the 24-hour clock starts. So yeah, here they are with their father.
Whose legs?
It's just his legs.
It's just leg. It's father legs.
Which is funny, but also touching because of
he can't see or hear. Yeah. And he knows, like, they communicate with him that it's his sons.
Yeah.
One of whom was born after he died.
Yeah.
And who only knows him through audio recordings.
Yeah.
It's this odyssey that they have to bring their father and actualize him into life together, so that the youngest son can see him, the father he's never known, and the eldest son can see the father that he's lost.
Yeah. And this movie is so funny in so many ways. Like the Chris Pratt character, he's like
the van.
He's the loser older brother, right? He's basically the equivalent of a dude who's like really into D&D.
Yes. Well, he's got the van with a unicorn on the side.
which in this fantasy world, D&D is like historical, so he keeps on thinking
it's like a history lesson.
Yeah, he keeps on thinking it's a history lesson, and he's got the beat up van, and his little brother's just so embarrassed by him.
Yeah,
and awesome. He chains himself into like old fantasy constructs and says, "Don't knock these down,"
like artifacts.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Don't knock down like the artifact of like Babul the Brave."
Yeah. And then there's an element with the father being only half there, but all these elements that are so funny, and they should be funny because they just end up being really gut-wrenching.
Human, like
gut-wrenching,
beautifully sincere.
Yeah. Like especially with the father, and the fact that he's only legs, it's significant because the older brother, he used to do this thing with his father's shoes where he would tap them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how they let the father know that they're with him, by tapping his shoe.
It's a specific rhythm that they did when they were babies.
Yeah.
That lets them know, like, your son is here.
Like,
I'm
tearing up too. It's so funny because it's just this dude walking around, it's just legs, and then they do something like that. this whole movie is just filled with scenes like that over and over again. Yeah, I was definitely tearing up on many points, especially like I'll just bring up one other really moving part. It's the son, and this is mild spoilers. The son is so excited to finally meet his dad, and he's written a list of things that he is going to do with them. And as they go longer and longer on this quest, he has to like cross things off, like have a heart to heart, play catch, and
and he has to cross them off because as time ticks down, it's clear they won't be able to fit in his dreams of being with his father and the stuff that he wants to do. And this movie, like for me and Mike, you know, we've lost our biological fathers, and for me, watching this was a really profound emotional experience, and it was kind of hard. It was kind of hard to get through it, kind of difficult to face this movie. And I watched it twice, and I watched it with my daughter, and I watched it with my wife, and that was really beautiful for me to do. And I loved that experience. And this is a movie that like immediately took the crown of some of the best Pixar movies and just vaulted to the top. Like in a year where everyone's praising Soul as one of the best animated movies ever made, I just say like no, it's Onward. It's Onward. Onward is so superior in almost every way.
Yeah. Wow. I actually came out of Onward being like just thinking about how I wanted my kids to view me. Like,
how would they remember you? How would they and the way that they remember their father is that he always wore these crazy socks, and you see the socks, but everyone knows the dad. And the youngest son only remembers his father because of this audio recording that he has when he's trying to fix the stereo that's accidentally recorded on the tape player, and he records a conversation in conjunction with his father, like he was talking to him.
I haven't seen this movie. I lost my dad when I was a kid. I've shared that before on the podcast. I'm a little afraid to. And I want to. I very much want to watch this movie. But I also very much want to make sure I do it in the right way. Because of what you guys have said about it. And how I know it's affected both of you. I mean, we're all dads here, and seems like a pretty big one.
I mean, we've talked about so many movies in this episode alone, and on this podcast, and this is the biggest emotional response I think we've ever gotten. Just talking about just a small fraction of it. I can't, and it's just an animated Pixar movie. I can't believe this exists and that not enough people have seen it.
I think this is a good lead in before we dwell too long. I think this is a good lead into our number one, and why it's our number one, and why not why Onward isn't our number one, but just why this one is. Mm-hmm. Our number one movie for 2020 is Sound of Metal. Yeah. It's directed and written by Darius Marder, and it's starring Riz Ahmed. This is a movie about a metal band drummer who slowly starts to go deaf and how he deals with losing his hearing. We all rate this movie 5 stars out of 5 stars. Mm-hmm. And if you would like to go forward without any kind of spoilers, please do. But from here on, we're going to spoil this thing. I would like to kind of start and just say, like, when Paul Raci, probably like he deserves to win Best Supporting Actor, the deaf man, Joe, who runs the house. Yeah. You know, he denies him his space. He says, like, you can't stay here. You can't be here with us, mm-hmm. because we don't view deafness as something to be cured. I was floored by that. It almost like that almost brought me to tears. Like, we don't view your disability as something to be compensated. And it's wrong of you to think you can fix that in the way that you're doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And then to go even further and to be like heartbroken by that. Like, he wants to help him, but can't. He can't because of the other people. And he says, like, I want you to think about the other people that are in this equation with you. And he said, I just want you to think about that moment of stillness, you know? in that stillness, he says in the earlier conversation, right? In that moment of stillness is the kingdom of God.
Yeah. I love the fact that this movie ends with that moment of stillness because it opens up and it's it's
loud.
It's loud. It's a
Hold on.
loud song that is. I don't like it at all. It's me and my wife
Purify!
Punk metal,
Ugh.
crazy drums, crazy guitar, crazy vocals. That's it.
My wife and I just looked at each other and we had this look that said, if there are more songs like this, we are not going to continue watching. And it just starts with such chaos.
Yeah.
And then it ends with this moment of peace.
Silence.
Yeah.
Silence.
It's the only movie where I've just sat because of that moment. You just don't want it to end. And you just sit there listening to this beautiful song over the credits. And me and my wife just sat there the entire time the credits were rolling and just
in like stillness. Like,
and we enjoyed it. It was an experience I've never gotten in any other movie.
So I want to share this experience that maybe connect with this movie. When I was growing up, I remember many moments in cathedrals and churches where I would attempt to seek this silence, seek the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Because it's not just Paul Racy that's saying this. It's not just the character. It's not just a deaf man who is shepherding a congregation of deaf people with addictions. This is a universal idea that in silence there is peace. Mm-hmm. This is the foundation of many world religions. I've been in those places. I've been in those situations, and in those situations, I did feel a lot like Riz Ahmed here, where you completely, it's like you can reach up to your head and unplug the aux cord that's connected to your ears, and you feel the great silence that is actually in the world. Space is silent.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're unplugging from the earth to feel the silence of space. I felt a deep connection. And I felt a deep connection in the sort of conversations that he was having about emotions, about human relationships. And in the end, I walked away having no way to really grapple with this person because this person felt a lot like me.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I felt the same way. Man, this was just a very deeply personal movie for me, and it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if there's more that I really want to say about it other than that. Go see it. Watch this movie. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie.
Even if it doesn't change your life, and it doesn't need to, but it is beautiful as itself.
Yeah. There is one part I guess I would like to talk about.
I'd love to.
Well, I guess, so I come from a background where I taught special ed. Heavy disabilities, like a lot of people that just couldn't straight up talk. And there's a mentality that you get when working with these kids, which is a realization that you get like nowhere else and no other job, which is there's going to be no progress made. They're never going to get better.
It's about coping.
They are where they are. And yeah, because it's weird when I say I was a special ed teacher, and teaching always implies that there's progress that's going to be made, that there's something that can be learned, and sometimes there wasn't. And so that's a mentality that I know and I'm very aware of. And so there's that scene where he first enters a property, though, and is talking with the old guy. And he starts immediately talking about the cure that he's going to receive. And the old guy makes very clear, like you were saying, we're not here for the cure. Like there isn't one.
We're here to live with it.
And he already knows that, and he's so aware of it. But our protagonist, he's not. He's just learning this, and in the audience, you're just realizing that too. There's no coming back.
Yeah,
this is something you're going to have to learn to cope with. There is no getting better, but there is peace that you can find.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not something that's really emphasized, because it's usually movies like this go like one of two ways. It's Hallmark-esque, which is like, there's this disability, you overcome it, and everything is fine and dandy. right? You can live your life the same way you were before, almost. Or there's the really depressing route, which is nothing's ever the same, and I guess your life sucks. And this movie doesn't do that.
No.
It strikes that weird balance where your life is never the same again, but you can maybe be in a better place.
You are different.
Yeah.
And you're different in whichever way you would choose to be different. Like, it's really up to you. Are you better or are you worse? Can you cope with it? Can you not?
Yeah.
Are you gonna be full of hate or are you gonna be full of hope? And that's why I think this is one of the most important movies that's been made in a long time, is who are you? Not only in the face of adversity, but just who are you in your DNA? And that's what this movie asks. Do you hope? Do you care? Do you love? Do you not? It's all here, and it's up to you to choose. And there's no value judgment onto what you do. What you do is just up to you.
Yeah.
But what are you? What do you choose? And that's why Sound of Metal broke my heart, because I'm not broken by a movie that wants to tell me what to think or what to feel. But I'm broken by a movie that asks me what I think, what I feel, given what it's shown me.
Yeah. Could you find peace?
Could I? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I try to envision that, like, all of us are here because we love talking, we love listening, we love conversing. What if one of us couldn't hear?
Yeah, that'd be wild.
What would life be? And that's what it reduced me to that level of being unable to function in a correct way, because I was robbed of my essential tools, but I wasn't given the training to sort of make up for it. No, so Sound of Metal, directed and written by Darius Marder and starring Riz Ahmed, is our movie. It's our movie of the year. It's our movie of 2020.
Absolutely.
It's just beautiful.
One of the best movies of all time.
I think so.
I mean, for a chaotic, insane year, what a wonderful kind of top movie this is. It's a movie. It starts out with chaos, and for a movie called Sound of Metal, it's so chaotic at the beginning, in the first minute.
Yeah,
like the first scene after that, after it, it's crazy, and then we get the title of Sound of Metal, and then they wake up in the trailer, and you're just listening to all of the beautiful little sounds of every day.
Yeah.
And also in terms of theme, it's called The Sound of Metal, and because there are three distinct stages of this movie, and every time it has to do with the sound of metal. Like at first, it's the sound of the banging cymbals, right, when he's on the drums and playing a metal song, basically. Yeah. Then the next time is he makes a breakthrough
with the kid, right?
With the kid on the slide banging the metal slide, and then the last moment of stillness comes from him unplugging
from metallic sounds
from the sound of the bell. It's amazing how that sound of metal is what metal makes a very distinct sound, right? And that one sort of sound is what pushes him, heard different ways, is what pushes him through the different phases of his life.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it wins. And you're going to see a lot of lists that Soul is going to top, Mank is going to top. And, we're here and we're just going to say, unequivocally, it's wrong if you don't think that The Sound of Metal is the best movie that came out this year.
Absolutely.
It's so beautiful and so transcendent, which is a word we haven't used yet, but I really do think it applies. It's the best. We love it. And,
it would make my day if it wins Best Picture.
Oh, me too.
I would just I would celebrate in the streets. Silently, of course.
I remember when Parasite came out, I sprang up in my living room amongst the people that I had invited. You know who you are. And I just said Bong Joon-ho! I was just so excited that it won. And I would feel the same way. This is a contribution to the greatness of cinema. Please go out. If you would like to, please watch our top 10, weigh in with your likes or dislikes. Please find us on our social media platforms. Get at us at Twitter, get at us at Facebook, get us at Reddit. Let us know. What do you think? What are your top 5 of the year? Do you disagree with us? Do you agree with us? What do you think about the movies that we watched and that we rated? We have a lot of things that are upcoming in our new season. A couple different series that we're very excited about that we've recorded, including a series where we listen to your recommendations, your requests, and that we do. And we're very, very excited to share that with you. But yeah, welcome to 2021 of Not Your Father's Movies. We are here. We are Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jesse.
And we're going to sign off. Happy 2021. See you soon.
Big 21 energy.
Hey everyone, this is Mike from Not Your Father's Movies. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got any questions on tonight's episode, thoughts on movies that should or should not be in the dad canon, and most importantly, things Vito got wrong, we'd literally love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with anything you got at notyourfathersmovies@gmail.com. That's notyourfathersmovies@gmail.com. And if that's not enough for you and you want more ways to listen to us, reach us, share us, and support us, check out our website at nyfm.podbean.com. That's nyfm.podbean.com. Shout out to Max Agros for our sick theme music. Thank you, Max, and thank you all again for listening to us. Have a great night.